Welcome to Nighttime Narratives, a place to relax and get ready for bed. I'm your host Jason, and I'm glad you're here tonight. Tonight we have a story for you about a weary traveler finds a quiet bench beneath a great tree, illuminated by the full moon. As they fall asleep, they awaken in a mysterious cabin in a peaceful meadow. There, they meet a wise old woman and a golden-eyed fox who guide them through dreamlike experiences. The traveler learns deep truths about nature, life, and their own inner peace. After a night filled with magical dreams and quiet wisdom, they wake up transformed. With gratitude in their hearts and new clarity in their minds, they set off on a new path, knowing that their journey is far from over, but now guided by everything they have learned. But before we begin, let's close our eyes, leave everything we have on the sidelines, and imagine the scenes in our heads. As always, first we'll relax our minds a little with some light music. It was one of those nights when the full moon bathed the world in a soft, silvery glow. The sky was clear, without a cloud in sight, and the moon shone brightly, like the most beautiful diamond in the vast expanse above. In a quiet corner of the world, where everything seemed peaceful and still, stood a great tree. Its branches reached high into the sky, like hands trying to touch the moon. Beneath this tree, on an old wooden bench, sat a gentle soul, gazing up at the glowing moon. The soft breeze rustled the leaves above, whispering ancient secrets, while the person on the bench smiled, feeling the serenity of the night seep into their very being. The moonlight wrapped everything in its warm embrace, and the world seemed to slow down, as if time itself were taking a deep breath. The person on the bench closed their eyes for a moment, letting the cool night air fill their lungs. They could hear the distant sound of a nightingale singing its soft, melodic tune, its voice blending with the rustling leaves of the tree. The world felt so calm, as if it was gently rocking to sleep, the moon watching over it all. The tree, ancient and wise, stood silently, as if it had been there for centuries, listening to the stories of the wind and the whispers of the stars. Its bark was rough and weathered, yet there was a quiet strength in it, a sense of patience and quiet power. The tree had seen countless moons, and each time it felt the same peaceful connection to the sky above. As the person sat there, a soft glow from the moon began to shine even brighter, casting a silver halo around the tree and the bench. The moonlight seemed to create a dreamlike atmosphere, where the boundaries between the real and the magical blurred. It was as if, in that moment, anything was possible, and the night held infinite possibilities. The person on the bench, feeling the deep tranquility of the moment, stretched their legs out and leaned back, resting their head against the rough bark of the tree. The cool wood felt solid and grounding, a reminder of the earth beneath their feet, while the gentle breeze carried the scent of pine and fresh earth. The world around them was so still, it felt as though time itself had paused to observe this serene scene. As the moonlight grew brighter, the shadows of the tree stretched across the ground, forming a patchwork of light and darkness. It was as if the tree itself had become a guardian of the night, watching over everything that rested beneath its branches. The person closed their eyes again, allowing themselves to sink deeper into the peaceful atmosphere. In that moment, they felt as though they were no longer just sitting beneath a tree, they were part of something much larger, something ancient and timeless. The wind picked up slightly, its soft touch caressing their face and hair. The tree's branches swayed gently, creating a symphony of soft whispers that seemed to come from the very heart of nature itself. The leaves, glistening under the moon's glow, shimmered like tiny stars, adding their own soft sparkle to the night. It felt as though the tree, the moon, and the wind were all telling a story, one that had been told countless times before, but each time it was slightly different, a story woven with the threads of the earth's mysteries. Suddenly, a small, delicate sound broke the stillness, a soft rustling from the bushes near the tree. The person opened their eyes slowly, intrigued by the sound, but they didn't move. Instead, they watched in wonder as a small creature, a fox with bright eyes and a golden coat, stepped cautiously out from the underbrush. The fox paused for a moment, looking up at the full moon, as if it too was drawn to its glow. The fox approached the tree, its steps silent on the soft earth. It circled the base of the tree, its sleek body weaving between the roots, before it stopped near the bench. The person, still unmoving, watched in awe as the fox sat down quietly beside them, its eyes reflecting the moonlight as it stared up at the sky. It was a moment of pure connection between the person, the tree, the fox, and the moon, all existing in perfect harmony under the vast expanse of the night. The breeze carried with it the soft rustle of leaves, the only sound in the stillness. The person felt an overwhelming sense of peace, as if they had been given the rare gift of witnessing a moment that was beyond words. The fox, with its graceful and quiet presence, seemed to embody the very spirit of the night, wild, free, yet at peace with the world around it. The moon continued its steady climb across the sky, its silver light pouring down over everything below. The person sat motionless, fully absorbed in the beauty of the moment. The fox, with its bright eyes still fixed on the sky, began to slowly move again. It circled the base of the tree one more time, its sleek fur catching the moonlight as it moved, its movements almost as graceful as the wind itself. The person marveled at the creature's quiet elegance, feeling as though they were witnessing something sacred. As if the fox was a living embodiment of the night itself, a creature of mystery, of silence, of deep, ancient wisdom. And in that moment, it felt like the fox understood something that the person could not yet fully grasp, something that could only be known by the moon, the stars, and the tree. The tree's branches swayed with a soft creaking sound, a sound that felt like a quiet song being sung by the earth itself. Its leaves shimmered gently, and the air seemed to hum with an energy that only the night could provide. It was as if the tree, with all of its ancient roots and time-weathered bark, held secrets that were whispered only under the moonlight, secrets of the earth, the sky, and the quiet rhythms of nature. The person closed their eyes again, drawn deeper into the magic of the night. Their thoughts began to drift like the clouds above, flowing slowly and peacefully, as if the world had given them permission to pause and simply be. The sounds of the wind and the rustling leaves became a lullaby, soothing their mind and their soul. The air felt cooler now, but it was a gentle coolness, like the tender embrace of the night itself, wrapping them in its calm and serenity. For a moment, the person felt as though they had become part of everything around them. They were no longer just an observer, they were part of the tree, part of the fox, part of the breeze, and part of the moonlight. It was as if their own heartbeat had synchronized with the rhythm of the world, and in that quiet synchrony, they could feel the pulse of the earth beneath them, the steady beat of life, flowing through every leaf and branch, every stone and root. And then, without warning, the moonlight seemed to grow even brighter, bathing the entire scene in an almost ethereal glow. The shadows of the trees stretched even further across the ground, and for a brief moment, the bench where the person sat seemed to disappear, swallowed up by the silver light. The fox stood up, its eyes still fixed on the moon, and slowly, almost reverently, it padded closer to the base of the tree. The person, still lost in the beauty of the moment, noticed how the fox seemed to communicate with the tree in its own way. Its movements were slow and deliberate, as if it was acknowledging something that only it could understand. The tree's branches gently swayed in response, as though the fox's presence had stirred something deep within the ancient bark, something that had been waiting for the right moment to awaken. For a long while, the fox and the tree remained in their quiet exchange, the person simply watching, a silent observer of something magical, something beyond their understanding. The night felt timeless, as if nothing could ever change or disrupt this perfect harmony. The world around them, for all its complexities, seemed so simple in that moment, just the tree, the moon, the fox, and the person, all existing together in a space where time had no meaning. As the minutes stretched into hours, the moonlight seemed to pulse with a rhythmic cadence, like the heartbeat of the world itself. The fox, now sitting once again beside the person on the bench, seemed to take in the quiet majesty of the night as though it too were deeply aware of the magic unfolding. The wind had calmed, and the gentle rustling of the leaves had quieted down, as if the very air was holding its breath in reverence to the tranquility that enveloped the scene. The person felt an undeniable connection to the world around them, an almost otherworldly bond that transcended logic or reason. It was as though, in this moment, all of the questions that had filled their mind during the day had been gently silenced, replaced by a sense of peace that ran deeper than anything they had ever known. Beneath the vast, glowing sky, with the tree standing tall and the fox by their side, they could sense that they were exactly where they were meant to be. And then, the quiet night sky seemed to shift slightly. At first, it was so subtle that the person almost didn't notice. A soft, golden hue began to seep into the moonlight, gently casting a warm glow over everything. It was as though the night itself was being painted with a new layer of light, bringing with it an added sense of comfort and serenity. The air, once cool and crisp, now felt warmer, like a soft, welcoming blanket that wrapped around the person's shoulders. The fox, with its sharp eyes and graceful poise, stood again, its ears flicking slightly as it turned its gaze to the horizon. The person followed the fox's gaze, and for a moment, they saw something they hadn't noticed before, a distant, shimmering glow on the edge of the forest. It was as though the very trees themselves were glowing faintly, as though there were a hidden light deep within them, waiting to be discovered. Curiosity stirred within the person. They had always felt that the forest was full of secrets, of things just out of sight, hidden beneath the leaves and the shadows. But this subtle glow felt different. It wasn't a trick of the eyes, nor was it the reflection of the moon. It was something alive, something that pulsed gently, calling out to them as if inviting them to explore. The fox, sensing the change in the air, began to walk toward the light, its tail flicking with quiet excitement. The person, still sitting on the bench, watched for a moment, unsure whether they should follow. But something deep within them, something that had awakened in the stillness of the night, urged them to rise and follow. With a slow, steady movement, they stood up, feeling the cool earth beneath their feet, grounded and connected to the world around them. The bench seemed to fade behind them, swallowed by the silver light of the moon. The path ahead of them was dimly lit by the moon's glow, but the faint golden light from the horizon beckoned them forward. The fox, moving with its quiet grace, continued to lead the way, occasionally turning its head to check if the person was following. As they walked, the air seemed to grow even more alive with the sounds of the night. The distant call of an owl, the soft scurrying of small creatures in the underbrush, and the rustle of leaves in the wind filled the air with a quiet symphony of the wild. The moonlight continued to bathe everything in its serene glow, and the person felt an overwhelming sense of calm, as if they were stepping into a place where only peace existed. The glow in the distance grew brighter, and with each step, the person felt a deeper sense of wonder and anticipation. What was it? What lay at the heart of this mysterious light? Was it a gift of the moon, or perhaps something older, something that had been waiting to be discovered for centuries? And then, as they drew closer to the source of the glow, they could see it more clearly, an ancient stone archway, half hidden by the trees. It was covered in ivy and moss, as though it had stood there for ages, untouched by time. The light that bathed the archway wasn't coming from any obvious source. It seemed to emanate from the stones themselves, as though they were alive with energy, pulsing with the same quiet rhythm that had filled the night. The fox stopped just before the archway, turning to look at the person with its bright, knowing eyes. The air around them seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for something to happen, something that had been long foretold. The person stood still for a moment, taking in the scene before them. The moonlight, the soft glow of the archway, the presence of the fox, all of it seemed to converge in that one quiet moment where time stood still and the world seemed to open up, offering a glimpse into a mystery that had been hidden for as long as the stars themselves. The person stepped closer to the ancient stone archway, their heart beating a little faster with a mixture of wonder and curiosity. The fox, still motionless, watched them closely, its eyes gleaming in the moonlight, as if silently encouraging them to approach. The golden glow from the archway shimmered and pulsed with a gentle rhythm, and as the person moved closer, they could feel the air around them becoming warmer, charged with an almost tangible energy. It was as though they were crossing into another world, a place where the ordinary rules of reality no longer applied. The stones of the arch were unlike anything the person had ever seen. They were carved with intricate symbols, some familiar and others strange, as though they were a language that could only be understood by the earth itself. The ivy and moss that clung to the stones seemed to move in the breeze, as if alive, as if the archway was breathing. Every part of it felt ancient, but also full of life, as though it was a living, breathing doorway to something far beyond the world they knew. The moonlight seemed to gather around the archway, pooling on the ground like liquid silver. The person could see now that the space beyond the arch was not simply dark, it was filled with a soft, glowing mist that shifted and danced, as though it held its own secrets. The path forward was unclear, hidden in the soft fog, but there was something deeply inviting about it, something that made them feel that they were meant to step through, that the universe itself was waiting for them to cross. The fox, without a sound, moved forward first, its graceful form disappearing into the mist beyond the arch. The person paused for a moment, their breath catching in their chest. They felt a wave of uncertainty. What lay beyond? What did it mean to step through that glowing archway? But as they stood there, looking at the fox's tail flicking through the mist, they felt an overwhelming sense of trust. In that moment, they knew that this was not just a journey through the night, but a journey through themselves, a journey towards something ancient and timeless that had always been waiting for them. Taking a deep breath, they stepped forward, their feet making contact with the cool, soft earth that lay just beyond the arch. The moment their foot crossed the threshold, they felt a gentle shiver run down their spine, as though the very air around them was vibrating with some ancient power. The mist seemed to swirl, parting slightly as if to welcome them, and the glow from the archway softened, like a warm embrace. The person stepped further, feeling the ground shift beneath their feet, and soon they were completely enveloped by the soft, glowing mist. For a few moments, they could see nothing but the swirling fog, but as their eyes adjusted, they began to make out shapes, soft, ethereal forms that drifted within the mist like distant stars. There were trees, not like the ones they knew, but taller and more graceful, their leaves shimmering in colors that didn't exist in the world they had known. There were flowers with petals that glowed softly, and streams of silver light that weaved through the mist, like rivers of starlight. The air was thick with the scent of flowers and fresh earth, and there was a deep, unspoken quiet here, as though the very land held its breath. The person looked around in awe. It was as though they had stepped into a dream, a world that was both familiar and entirely new. The trees here didn't just stand, they seemed to sway with a life of their own, their branches reaching out as though to touch them, to invite them deeper into this place. The fox was no longer visible, but they could feel its presence nearby, as if it were guiding them, watching over them from somewhere just out of sight. As they walked forward, they felt their senses heighten, as if they were seeing the world through a new lens. The colors of the mist, the movement of the trees, the soft hum in the air, they were all alive in a way they couldn't explain. It was as if the world here had its own rhythm, its own pulse, and somehow, they were part of it. They took another step, and suddenly, the mist began to part more fully, revealing a small clearing ahead. In the center of the clearing stood a great tree, taller than any they had seen before, its bark a deep shade of silver, its branches heavy with glowing fruit that shimmered with the same golden light as the archway. The tree seemed to pulse with energy, like the heart of this magical world, and standing beneath it was the fox, now sitting calmly, waiting. The person approached the tree slowly, their heart racing in anticipation. There was something about this tree, something deeply powerful, that felt as though it had been waiting for them, calling them all along. The golden fruit that hung from its branches seemed to beckon, their soft light casting a warm glow around the clearing. It was as if the tree itself held the answers to questions they hadn't even thought to ask yet, as though it held the secrets of the universe, waiting to be shared. The fox, sensing the person's arrival, stood and padded silently toward the base of the tree. Its eyes, gleaming in the soft light, seemed to convey a sense of trust, as if urging the person to come closer, to make the final step toward this ancient, mystical being. The person stood still for a moment, gazing up at the tree, feeling the weight of its presence. The breeze had stopped, and the entire clearing seemed to hold its breath, waiting. And then, with a deep, steadying breath of their own, they took the final step toward the tree, their hand reaching out to touch the glowing fruit that hung just within reach. As their fingers brushed the glowing fruit, the moment felt like an eternity. A wave of energy surged through them, gentle but powerful, as though the tree itself was sharing its ancient wisdom. The fruit, warm to the touch, pulsed in rhythm with their heartbeat. For a brief second, they thought they saw the faintest shimmer of memories flash across their mind, images of ancient landscapes, distant stars, and moments long forgotten by the world. They could feel the whispers of the earth, the wind, and the sky all swirling together, as though the tree held the collective memories of the world itself. The fox, still sitting quietly at the base of the tree, seemed to watch the scene with a deep, knowing gaze, its eyes flickering with the light of the moon. It wasn't just a fox, it was a guide, a messenger, perhaps even a guardian of this mystical place. The person's mind swirled with thoughts, but there was one emotion that stood above all others: peace. It was as if, by touching the fruit, They had unlocked a connection to something greater than themselves, something eternal. It was a quiet kind of knowing, one that didn't need words to be understood. The world, in all its complexity, was held together by something simple, something beautiful, and it all made sense in this moment. As they stood there, hands still resting on the fruit, the tree began to shift. Slowly, the bark of the tree seemed to shimmer and glow brighter, as though it was responding to the touch. The branches above them began to move in a slow, deliberate dance, casting soft, shifting shadows across the clearing. The golden fruit above them glowed even brighter, and the air filled with a faint hum of energy, like a song that could not be heard with the ears, but could be felt deep within the soul. And then, the tree spoke. Its voice was not heard in words, but in a language deeper than speech, felt rather than understood. The very air seemed to vibrate with it, resonating in their bones, in the core of their being. It was the voice of the earth itself, a timeless echo that had existed since the dawn of creation. The message was clear, though the words were not. "You are part of all that is," the voice seemed to say. "You have come, not by chance, but by fate. The paths you walk are yours to shape, and yet they are intertwined with the rhythm of the world, just as the roots of this tree are woven into the fabric of the earth. Know that the journey you have taken is but one of many, and each step you take will echo across the fabric of time, sending ripples that will touch lives beyond your understanding." The person stood frozen, overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of what they were experiencing. This was not just a dream, it was a revelation, a connection to something vast and powerful. The moonlight, the fox, the tree, all of it had led them here, to this very moment. And in that moment, they knew with an unshakable certainty that they were not alone. The world, the universe, was alive with energy, with love, with connection. The air around them seemed to shift again, the glowing mist now swirling in intricate patterns, weaving between the trees and the glowing fruit, forming a tapestry of light and shadow. The soft hum of the world grew louder, and the person felt a deep peace settle over them. The weight of their worries, their doubts, and their fears seemed to vanish in the presence of this ancient, ethereal power. They were exactly where they needed to be, and in that moment, all the questions they had ever asked seemed irrelevant. All that mattered was the present, the quiet beauty of the night, the connection to the world around them, and the peace that settled into their heart. The fox, sensing the shift, stood and began to move toward the edge of the clearing, its tail swaying with the rhythm of the breeze. It looked back at the person, its eyes bright and knowing, as though it was inviting them to follow. Without a word, the person took one last look at the glowing tree and stepped forward, following the fox into the mist once again. As they moved deeper into the forest, the mist parted before them, revealing a path that led deeper into the heart of this magical realm. The air was now thick with the scent of ancient flowers, and the trees seemed to part for them, as though the very forest itself was alive and welcoming them. The path ahead was bathed in soft, golden light, guiding them forward. It was as though the journey itself was unfolding, as if they were meant to walk this path, step by step, discovering new wonders at every turn. The fox, moving gracefully ahead, led the way, its movements fluid and confident, as though it knew exactly where it was going. The person followed, their steps light, their heart full of a deep, unspoken joy. They felt like a traveler, but not just a traveler of the physical world. They were a traveler of the soul, walking through a realm where time and space had no hold. The journey was as much internal as it was external, and with each step they took, they felt a greater sense of alignment with the world around them, with the earth, the moon, and the stars. The path they walked seemed to stretch on forever, but it wasn't a path of distance. It was a path of discovery, of connection. The farther they walked, the deeper the connection became, and the more they understood the silent language of the universe. The fox led them on, never rushing, always moving with purpose, as if it was guiding them to some ultimate truth, some deeper understanding that awaited them just beyond the horizon. The mist began to thicken again as they ventured deeper into the forest, swirling around them like a veil, soft and cool against their skin. The trees around them grew taller still, their trunks twisted and gnarled, as though they had been standing here for centuries, witnessing the passage of time without ever truly aging. The air smelled of damp earth and ancient wood, the scent of life that had been nurtured for eons, undisturbed by the world beyond. With each step, the path seemed to open wider, as if the forest itself was aware of their presence, guiding them, allowing them to pass through its depths as if they were meant to be here all along. The fox moved ahead, its tail flicking like a beacon in the distance, leading the way with unhurried confidence. The person, though overwhelmed by the beauty of it all, felt an immense peace settle in their chest. There was no need for urgency, no need to hurry. They were simply walking, letting the forest unfold around them in its own time. As they walked, the person began to notice the subtle sounds that filled the air, birds with voices like soft chimes, insects humming a quiet, harmonic tune, and the faint rustling of leaves in the breeze. It was a music of the earth, a symphony composed by nature itself. Each sound seemed to harmonize with the others, creating a peaceful melody that filled the person's mind with a deep sense of tranquility. Eventually, the path began to bend, and the trees began to clear, revealing a vast, open space ahead. The mist parted like a curtain, and what lay before them took their breath away. A large lake stretched out before them, its surface shimmering in the soft moonlight like liquid glass. The water reflected the silver glow of the full moon, creating a scene of unparalleled beauty. The lake seemed endless, stretching far beyond where the person's eyes could see, its calm surface broken only by the gentle ripples that came from the breeze. At the edge of the lake, there was a small wooden boat, its edges weathered by time but sturdy, floating serenely on the water. It was tied to a post with a simple rope, as though waiting for someone. The fox stopped by the edge of the lake, turning its head to look back at the person. Its eyes seemed to shine with a knowing look, as if it were saying, "This is where the journey truly begins." Without hesitation, the person moved toward the boat, their heart beating in time with the quiet rhythm of the water. They untied the rope gently, feeling the weight of the moment press upon them. The boat bobbed lightly in the water, inviting them to step aboard. The fox, after giving them one last glance, padded softly along the shore, disappearing into the mist, leaving the person alone with the boat. The person climbed into the boat carefully, the wood creaking under their weight. As they sat down, they found that the boat was surprisingly comfortable, as if it had been built specifically for this moment. The boat glided smoothly into the water, almost as if it was moving of its own accord. The person didn't need to row or paddle, the boat simply moved, carried by an unseen force, as if the water itself was guiding them. The soft ripples spread out around them as they drifted into the middle of the lake, the boat moving with a slow, rhythmic grace. The moon hung high above, its light casting long, silver beams across the water, creating a path that stretched out before them, leading into the horizon. The water, though still, seemed alive, its depths holding secrets, memories, and stories that stretched far back in time. As they floated on, the person felt a deep sense of connection to the lake, to the moon, to the world that surrounded them. It was as if they were no longer just a traveler moving through this world, but a part of it, a part of something much larger, much older than they had ever realized. They were one with the earth, one with the stars, and the boat, the water, the moon, they were all part of this same ancient rhythm. Time seemed to lose all meaning as they drifted, the gentle rocking of the boat lulling them into a state of calm. The mist, which had once enveloped them, was now a distant memory, replaced by the serene stillness of the lake. The night sky stretched endlessly above, a tapestry of stars that twinkled like distant dreams. For a moment, it felt as though they had left the world behind, that they were floating in a timeless space between moments, between worlds. As they floated farther out into the lake, the person's thoughts began to slow, their mind quieting with each passing moment. They realized that they weren't just drifting on the water, they were also drifting within themselves, allowing the stillness of the lake to mirror the stillness in their heart. It was a journey of both the outer world and the inner world, one that connected the very essence of their being with the rhythm of the universe. The boat continued to glide forward, its path guided by the moon's silver light. There was no destination, no final point. It was simply the journey, the movement, the quiet passage through the night, and the peace that came with it. The water seemed to hum beneath the boat, a soft melody that spoke to the heart, and the stars above seemed to listen, shining brighter with each passing moment. For the first time, the person felt completely at peace, no longer concerned with the past or the future. The world had faded away, leaving only the present moment, pure, untouched, and full of infinite possibilities. The boat moved, the water flowed, and the moon continued to shine. And in that moment, everything was exactly as it was meant to be. As the boat drifted farther into the heart of the lake, the silence became deeper, more profound. It was a silence that wrapped around the person like a warm blanket, filled with the soft whispers of the world's forgotten stories. The silver beams of the moon cut through the darkness, tracing delicate patterns on the surface of the water. The lake had become a mirror, reflecting not only the stars above but the quiet landscape of the soul within. Each ripple in the water seemed to carry a story, an ancient memory that swirled beneath the surface, waiting for someone to listen. The person leaned back against the smooth, weathered wood of the boat, letting the motion of the water guide them. The gentle rocking lulled them into a meditative state, where the boundaries of reality and dream began to blur. They closed their eyes for a moment, and as they did, a soft breeze brushed across their face, carrying with it a faint scent of flowers, distant and familiar. It was as if the lake itself held the memory of 1,000 lifetimes. Every petal, every leaf, every moment in time was alive in the wind. In the stillness, a new presence seemed to emerge. The faintest shimmer, barely perceptible at first, began to move across the water's surface. At first, the person thought it was simply a trick of the moonlight, a flicker of movement in the stillness. But as they watched, they realized it was something else, a figure, a being, made entirely of light. It moved with grace, its form shifting like liquid silver, glowing softly in the night. The figure was a silhouette, flowing and ethereal, its edges blurred and shifting like mist. The being approached the boat slowly, its movements fluid and peaceful, as though it was one with the water itself. The person sat up, unsure of what they were witnessing, yet feeling no fear, only awe. The figure seemed to sense their attention, for it moved closer, now just at the edge of the boat, its glowing form casting soft light onto the water. A voice, not spoken with words but felt deeply in the person's heart, filled the air. "Do not fear, traveler," the voice said, gentle and kind. "I am a guardian of this lake, a keeper of its stillness. You have come far, and now you are ready to listen." The person's heart skipped a beat. They had heard no words spoken aloud, yet they understood the message perfectly. It was a language of the soul, a knowing that went beyond the need for speech. The figure moved closer still, its form shimmering like stardust, the silver light reflecting on the water in intricate patterns. "I have witnessed many who have crossed this lake," the figure continued. "But few have been as ready as you. You have opened your heart to the rhythm of the world, to the quiet pulse of life that flows through all things. And now, you will hear what the world has longed to share with you." The figure's presence seemed to grow, expanding outward, and the boat came to a gentle halt, as if the water itself had decided to pause in reverence. The person felt a deep stirring inside, a pull towards something far beyond the horizon, something ancient and wise. It was as if the lake, the moon, the wind, and the stars were all coming together, sharing their secrets, their stories, their wisdom with this one traveler. The figure raised its hand, and the water around the boat began to shimmer more brightly, the surface rippling in delicate waves. In the flickering light, the person saw shapes, forms, faces, and images emerging from the depths of the lake. They were not physical beings, but impressions, like the memories of long-forgotten dreams. Each shape represented a moment in time, a fleeting instant in the grand tapestry of the universe. The first image was of a child running through a field, their laughter carried on the wind. The child was barefoot, free, unburdened by the weight of the world. The second image was of an old couple sitting together on a porch, their hands intertwined, a quiet understanding between them. The third was of a ship sailing across a vast ocean, its sails full of wind, cutting through the waters with purpose and grace. The images continued, each one more vivid than the last, painting a picture of life in all its forms, the joy, the sorrow, the fleeting beauty of existence. The person watched in awe as the memories of the world, the moments of every life, played out before them. It was as if they were witnessing the history of the earth itself, each image representing a piece of the puzzle that made up the whole of life. "This is the truth that lies beneath the surface," the guardian spoke again, its voice soft and soothing. "Every moment, every choice, ripples outward, touching lives in ways unseen. The world is not a collection of isolated events, but a vast, interconnected web. Every soul, every creature, every tree and star are all part of the same story." The person felt a deep sense of understanding flood through them. They saw now, as if for the first time, the intricate threads that connected all things. The world was not separate, not isolated. Everything was part of a greater whole, and each individual, each life, no matter how small or fleeting, played a role in the grand tapestry. As the images began to fade, the lake once again became still, the water calm and clear. The guardian's figure remained at the edge of the boat, its light now dimming but still present, like the last faint glow of the stars before the dawn. "You have seen what is hidden," the guardian said, its voice now a mere whisper, like the soft murmur of the wind. "Now, you must carry this knowledge with you. Remember that the journey you are on is not just your own. It is part of something much greater. You are connected to everything, and everything is connected to you." The boat, now once again moving on its own accord, began to gently drift back toward the shore, the ripples in the water calming with each passing moment. The figure began to fade, its light dissolving into the air, leaving behind only the soft glow of the moon and the gentle stillness of the lake. The person felt the weight of the moment settle within them, the deep peace that came from understanding their place in the world, their connection to all things. The journey had not been just a physical one, but a journey of the soul, a journey toward deeper understanding, toward acceptance, toward peace. The path wound back through the forest, the trees standing tall and silent like ancient sentinels. The mist had returned, though it was lighter now, like a soft blanket drifting lazily across the forest floor. The fox, still moving ahead with its quiet grace, led the way, its tail flicking in the moonlight, leaving a trail of light in its wake. The person followed, their steps light and purposeful, though the weight of what they had just experienced seemed to carry with them. Each step felt more connected, as if the very earth beneath their feet was attuned to their presence, welcoming them back into its fold. The journey across the lake had been more than just a passage of water, it had been a passage of the soul. And as the person walked, they felt a subtle shift within them, a deepening of understanding. They felt less like a mere wanderer in the world and more like a part of the eternal dance of life. The very air around them seemed to hum with an ancient, quiet energy, a soft pulse that echoed the heartbeat of the earth itself. As they continued, the path began to narrow, and the forest around them grew denser, the trees closer together, their branches reaching overhead like the arms of giants. The air grew heavier, filled with the scent of damp wood and moss, the smell of the earth in its purest form. The shadows deepened, but the moonlight still filtered through, casting long, slanting beams of light that illuminated the path ahead. Each step they took was a step deeper into the forest, deeper into the mystery that surrounded them. The fox paused ahead, looking back over its shoulder as if waiting for the person to catch up. When they did, it trotted ahead, its steps light and sure, moving with the confidence of one who knew the path as well as the wind knows the sky. The person followed, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over them, as if the forest itself had accepted them. They were not a stranger here, they were a guest, invited to witness the quiet beauty of the world, a beauty that had always existed, long before human eyes ever gazed upon it. As they walked, the sounds of the forest began to change. The soft rustling of the leaves, the distant calls of the night birds, the hum of insects, all these sounds began to merge into a kind of symphony, a quiet chorus that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was as if the forest was speaking, though not in words. The whispers were not meant to be heard by the ears, they were meant to be felt by the heart, by the soul. The trees, the animals, the wind, they were all part of the same story, and in this moment, the person was part of that story too. They continued on, the path growing steeper now, winding upward, as if leading them toward the very heart of the forest. The trees grew larger, their trunks wider and more imposing, their branches reaching up into the sky like great arms, their leaves thick and heavy with the weight of centuries. The moon above seemed to grow brighter still, its light now bathing the forest in a soft, ethereal glow, turning the shadows into something beautiful, something full of wonder. At the top of the rise, the path opened up into a small clearing. The trees parted to reveal a quiet meadow, its grass soft and cool beneath the person's feet. At the center of the meadow stood a massive tree, its trunk wide and ancient, its branches sprawling in all directions, covered in thick, green leaves that seemed to shimmer in the moonlight. The tree was unlike any other the person had seen, its bark was smooth and pale, almost silver, and it seemed to pulse with a quiet energy, as if it were alive in a way no tree had ever been before. The fox paused at the edge of the meadow, its eyes shining in the moonlight as it turned to look at the person. Then, with a final flick of its tail, it disappeared into the shadows, leaving the person alone in the meadow, facing the great tree. The person felt a pull, a deep, unspoken call to approach the tree. They stepped forward, their heart racing with anticipation, and as they did, a soft wind rose, lifting the leaves of the tree in a gentle dance. The air seemed to hum with energy, and the person felt as if they were walking into a place of great significance, a place where time itself bent and shifted. As they reached the base of the tree, they felt a strange warmth emanating from it, a comforting, almost familiar warmth. They placed their hand on the smooth bark, feeling its coolness beneath their fingers, and at that moment, a surge of energy passed through them, as though the tree had opened a channel between them and the very core of the earth. the world around them seemed to pause. The sounds of the forest grew distant, the wind stilled, and the moonlight became brighter, flooding the clearing with a radiant glow. For a moment, the person felt as if they were floating, suspended in time, held in the embrace of the ancient tree. And then, as if the earth itself had whispered its secrets into their soul, they understood. This tree was not just a tree, it was a keeper of memories, a keeper of the world's stories. Its roots reached deep into the earth, connecting it to the very heart of the planet. Its branches stretched up to the heavens, touching the stars, carrying the wisdom of the cosmos. And through the person's touch, through the connection they had forged in this moment, they could feel it all, the pulse of life, the ebb and flow of the universe, the infinite web of existence that connected every living thing. The person stood there for what felt like an eternity, their mind quiet, their heart full. In that silence, they felt a deep, profound sense of belonging, as though they were part of something far greater than themselves, something ancient and eternal. The knowledge of the world, the wisdom of the ages, was within their grasp, and yet they understood that it was not something to be owned or possessed. It was something to be experienced, something to be shared. And then, just as suddenly as it had come, the moment passed. The wind began to stir again, the leaves of the tree rustling in the breeze, and the world slowly returned to its natural rhythm. The person withdrew their hand from the tree, feeling a deep sense of peace and understanding settle within them. They turned and looked around, as if seeing the world for the first time, a world full of beauty, mystery, and connection. The journey continued, but now it felt as though the world itself had shifted. The steps of the person were lighter, as though the very ground beneath their feet had become softer, more welcoming, more alive. The air, rich with the sense of earth and growth, seemed to hum with an energy that was both ancient and new. Every leaf on every tree, every blade of grass, every whisper of the wind, everything seemed to hold a secret, a memory, a story waiting to be told. The fox led them through the forest with ease, its movements flowing through the trees like a shadow in the night, graceful and purposeful. There was no hurry in its steps, no need to rush, as if time itself had slowed, allowing them both to savor each moment, each sensation. The moon above hung like a beacon, casting its soft, silver light across the landscape, making the world feel like a dream, a space between sleep and waking. As the person walked, they could feel the landscape around them begin to change. The trees began to thin, their towering trunks becoming less frequent, the underbrush softer and lighter. The sounds of the forest grew distant, replaced by the gentle murmur of a stream, its babbling water flowing through the now open landscape. The sky above had begun to take on a deeper hue, a rich, velvet blue that was dotted with stars, each one twinkling like a secret kept just beyond reach. The person and the fox emerged from the trees and found themselves standing at the edge of a vast, open field. The grass here was tall and soft, swaying gently in the breeze, and at the far side of the field stood a small, simple cabin, its windows glowing warmly with the light from within. The sight of it was oddly comforting, like a familiar memory of a place long forgotten. The cabin was nestled in the curve of a low hill, surrounded by wildflowers that seemed to sway in time with the wind. Without a word, the fox turned and began walking toward the cabin, its tail flicking back and forth. The person followed, feeling a strange sense of peace, as though the path had been leading them here all along, and now they were simply following the course of their own journey. As they reached the cabin, the door creaked open, revealing a warm, welcoming light. The smell of fresh bread and herbs filled the air, and a soft, melodic hum could be heard from inside, as though someone was singing a song, gentle, timeless, and full of peace. The person stepped inside, following the fox, and was immediately enveloped in the warmth of the room. The cabin was small but cozy, with wooden beams that crisscrossed the ceiling and a large stone fireplace crackling softly in one corner. There was a table by the window, covered in simple dishes of food, bread, cheese, fruit, and a steaming pot of tea. The air inside was warm and inviting, filled with the scent of spices and herbs, and the soft light from the hearth bathed the room in a golden glow. At the table sat an elderly woman, her hair silver and long, her face lined with the wisdom of many years. She smiled warmly at the person, her eyes twinkling with a knowing light. She was dressed in simple, flowing clothes, and there was a quiet grace about her, as if she were a part of the very fabric of the world itself. "Ah, you've come," she said, her voice soft and melodic, like the sound of the wind through the trees. "I've been expecting you." The person felt an overwhelming sense of recognition, as though they had known this woman for a lifetime, even though they had never met before. It was as if their souls had somehow been woven together long ago, and now, in this quiet moment, they had come together again. "I see you have learned much," the woman continued, gesturing for the person to sit at the table. "The path has been long, but you have opened your heart to the wisdom of the world. Now, it is time for you to rest, to reflect, and to listen." The person sat at the table, feeling a sense of calm settle over them. They could feel the presence of the woman, her energy filling the room, wrapping them in a gentle embrace. The fox curled up by the hearth, its eyes closing in contentment, and the fire crackled softly, casting flickering shadows on the walls. "There are many stories in this world," the woman said, her voice soft and soothing. "Stories of love and loss, of joy and sorrow, of beginnings and endings. But there is one story that we must all remember, for it is the story of the earth itself, the story of life and death, of growth and decay. It is the story of balance." The person listened intently, the weight of the woman's words sinking deep into their heart. The firelight seemed to dance around them, casting flickering shadows on the walls, and for a moment they felt as though they were outside of time, standing on the edge of something vast and eternal. "You have seen the way the world moves," the woman continued. "The way it breathes, the way it changes. You have felt its pulse in your own heart, and you have seen how all things are connected. The tree, the lake, the stars, the wind, everything is part of the same song, and you are part of that song as well." The person's eyes drifted to the window, where the moon shone brightly in the sky, casting its silver light across the field. They could feel the pull of the earth, the quiet rhythm that pulsed beneath their feet, and they knew that this was the truth they had been searching for all along. They were not separate from the world, they were part of it, woven into the very fabric of existence. "Rest now," the woman said, her voice a gentle lullaby. "The journey is not over, but for now, you must sleep. Tomorrow, you will continue, but tonight, you must allow the world to settle within you. Let it fill your dreams, and when you wake, you will be ready to carry its stories with you." The person nodded, feeling a sense of peace wash over them. They stood, their legs heavy with weariness, and moved to the small bed by the window. The woman smiled at them, her eyes filled with kindness, and the fox curled up at the foot of the bed, its warm body a comforting presence. As the person lay down, they gazed out the window at the moon, now high in the sky, its light shimmering across the meadow. The world outside was quiet, still, and full of secrets. The soft hum of the wind through the trees seemed to whisper through the open window, and the person's eyelids grew heavy, their bodies sinking into the warmth of the bed. As the person slept, the quiet of the night wrapped itself around them like a soft, protective blanket. The wind outside continued its gentle song through the trees, while the moonlight bathed the cabin in a serene glow. The fox, ever watchful, sat by the hearth, its golden eyes glimmering in the dim light, as if it too was part of the greater mystery of the night. The elderly woman, with her knowing smile, had disappeared into the shadows, her presence now a comforting memory that lingered in the air. The hours passed in peaceful silence, and the person's dreams were filled with strange and beautiful visions. They dreamed of vast, endless fields under a sky streaked with colors they had never seen before. They saw forests that whispered their ancient secrets, rivers that wound through mountains of crystal, and the stars that seemed to dance in harmony with the music of the wind. In their dream, they stood beneath the great tree once more, its branches extending upward, reaching for the heavens, while its roots burrowed deep into the earth. They felt the same surge of energy pass through them, the quiet knowledge of the world's eternal balance, and they understood, truly understood, that life was a circle, a continuous ebb and flow of creation and destruction, of beginnings and endings. The dream was a gift, a deepening of the connection between the person and the world around them. They knew, in that moment, that they had become part of something far greater than themselves. Their journey, while personal, was also universal, a journey that each soul undertakes, whether they realize it or not. They had been given the opportunity to see the world through the eyes of the earth itself, to feel the rhythm of life that pulsed through everything. And when the morning light began to filter through the cabin's window, soft and golden, the person awoke. They stretched, their body feeling light, as if the weight of the world had lifted from their shoulders. The world outside the window was still and peaceful, the sky painted in the pale colors of dawn. For a moment, the person simply lay there, taking in the serenity of the moment, allowing the dream to settle within them. The fox was already awake, sitting by the window, its eyes scanning the meadow outside. The elderly woman appeared once more, this time standing by the door, a gentle smile on her face. She motioned for the person to join her, and they rose from the bed, their body feeling refreshed, their mind clear. "It is time," the woman said softly, her voice like the rustling of leaves in a gentle breeze. "The path that brought you here has come to its end, but the journey continues. You have learned what you needed to learn, and now, it is time for you to carry those lessons with you." The person nodded, feeling a sense of peace settle over them. They knew that the journey ahead would be just as important as the one they had already walked. They were ready to move forward, to embrace whatever the world had in store for them. The woman walked with them to the door of the cabin, and as they stepped outside, the world greeted them with open arms. The meadow was still, the flowers swaying gently in the breeze, and the sky above was clear and bright, filled with the soft glow of the rising sun. The path that had led them here stretched out before them, winding through the fields and into the forest beyond. Before they left, the fox turned to them, its golden eyes reflecting the wisdom of the journey they had shared. The person knelt down, placing a hand on the fox's head, feeling the warmth of its fur, and in that moment, they knew that they had made a true connection. The fox had been their guide, their companion, and now, it was time to say goodbye. "Thank you," the person whispered softly, their heart full of gratitude. "Thank you for showing me the way." The fox let out a soft, melodic bark, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 stories. Then, it turned and disappeared into the trees, its form blending seamlessly with the shadows of the forest. The person stood there for a moment, taking in the quiet beauty of the world around them. The path was theirs to walk now, but they knew they would never be truly alone. The lessons of the forest, of the tree, of the fox, and of the wise woman would stay with them, guiding them through the twists and turns of life. With a final glance at the cabin, they began to walk down the path, their steps steady and sure. They knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it with an open heart and a clear mind, for they had learned to see the world not as a series of obstacles, but as a grand, unfolding story, a story that they were now a part of, a story that would continue to unfold for as long as they lived. And as they walked, the wind whispered in their ears, the trees swayed gently in the breeze, and the moon above, now fading into the light of day, seemed to smile down upon them, knowing that the journey was far from over, and that the story was always continuing, just waiting to be told. The person smiled softly to themselves, a sense of peace filling their soul, and with that, they continued on their way, knowing that the world was full of endless possibilities and endless stories, all waiting for them to discover. The story ends here, but remember, the journey never truly ends. Every step is a new beginning, and every path leads to new adventures. Friends, and with that, another fantastic story comes to an end. I hope you enjoyed it. I won't bother you much more, just keep your eyes closed and slowly drift into sleep.